Hello and welcome to Outdoors and That. In this video we are looking at implied features. So this is part 7 of our navigation series. So check out the full series on the playlist over there. And we are going to be looking at implied features. So they're features which are not overtly marked on the map, but through the use of contour lines we can see these features and distinguish them in the landscape around us as well. And so that's a really useful tool for doing precise and fine navigation and really helping us in our off-track situations to not get confused by small features which might appear or not really appear on the map, but can trick us into thinking we've gone further than we have or not far enough in our walking on the land. So let's start on those features now. We've just been following this creek line up here, and the blue line of the map actually comes up to right about where we're standing here, but the gully, which has been indented into the landscape, follows up this way here. The landscape features on the map show the main part of the gully heading up this way, and here we have what's called a re-entrant, which is the top of a creek line, and so it forms a really half bowl shape, and that's pretty faint on the landscape. But then we've got a ridge to one side and a ridge to the other side, and then a saddle is up at the top of that re-entrant. So this is the top of the creek, and it's providing the catchment for the water to run down to where we are here. And then we've got a little wet section there, which is why we've got this swampy kind of landscape there. So this little bit's a bit tricky because the map indicates that the main creek line is heading up in this direction. When you get up on the land, you can see the implied feature on the map is actually taking us up this way, and this is where this little track is heading as well. And the creek line on the land is actually following the implied feature rather than the mapped feature. So we were just looking at the re-entrant there, and now we've walked up this way a little bit. We have our implied creek line here. So in the contour lines you can see that as a little horseshoe, and it's more than 10 meters on either side, so that's why it's showing up as a divot or a change in the contour lines, and that continues up this way. And this is actually the main path of the creek, even though it was marked on the map that re-entrant was the top of the creek. But when we see the implied features, then we can incorporate that into our understanding of what we're seeing in the landscape. Here we have the top of this implied creek line. So just the creek line running down the center, and then a hill off to the left and a hill off to the right, forming two ridge lines there on our map. So here we have two small gullies, one running in here and one running in there, and they're going to be implied features on our map. Then once they join together, they form a larger gully which is running down the hill there, and so that's going to be marked on our map with a small blue line. But these top features are implied by the contour line. So when we look at our contour lines, we can see the little divots in them which indicate that change in elevation for that location. So right here we have a gully, and this feature is not going to show up on the map because it's only about 3 to 4 meters deep, and it needs to be at least 10 meters deep for it to show up on our contour line. So the contour line just skips across the top of the land surface here, but then the gully is in the landscape, and so it can sometimes confuse people that they think this is like quite a major creek line, but in fact it's just a little divot because the soil is soft and that's been cut out of the landscape. But really we're in a small creek line here, and it is marked on the map with a blue line, but you know, it's not a major feature of the land. So this gully is something that you might just come across, but it's not something that you should take as a sign that it is a really huge feature in the landscape, because it's only a couple of meters deep, and although it's difficult to cross or walk through, it is not a large landscape feature. All right, so I've come down to this little spot to look at 3 features on the map. So there's 3 little divots in the contours, and they're showing up as implied land features. Up the hill behind me, I have a relatively smooth slope, but then as we get down the hill, we've started to get some initial creek lines forming, and that's going to be in a flat slope. So when it's in a flat slope, the lines are running really flat along the top, but then you start to get these wiggles down the bottom, and that's what we've started to see here as a little indent into the landscape down there, and then a little bit of a ridge over here and a ridge on the other side, and then on the other side of that one there is yet another little divot as well. So these are really small features, but if you're walking where I am, then the landscape seems relatively flat along the top. But then if you're another 50 meters, 100 meters down that way, then you're going to be going up and down over all these little features. So we have a knoll up there, and then down here we have a very small saddle, and then what I'm standing on right now is actually another small knoll, and this is what we'll call an implied feature. In between our main knoll there and then our knoll over here, we have what's called a saddle. So we've got a creek line on that side and a creek line on that side, and if we were to tip some water out in the middle here, some of it would flow that way and some of it would flow this way, and then we have uphill on either side of that. And so that's what a saddle is as a feature. All right, so just on the left of screen here, we have an implied knoll, and so this is a really good example of that. It's big enough that it stands out in the landscape, but it's not big enough that it's showing up with multiple contour lines. It's just shown as a extension of the contour line on the ridge, and that contour line runs around about the midpoint of this. So you can't see the top of that on the map because it doesn't have enough height to warrant another circular contour line up the top, but it does extend out this next one into a horseshoe shape, which is giving us our implied knoll feature. So our feature here is a small creek line, but the main thing I wanted to point out is that over on this side there is an implied ridgeline in the contours. So we have the hill going up and over down like that, then we have a ridgeline running up this way, and then it slopes back down to the creek. And so this is only just marked on the map because it's ticking that 10-meter contour interval, so it's 10 meters high, which means it's going to show up, but it's just shown up as a little bulge on the map, and that's the implied feature that we see. So pretty faint as a land feature, but it is just big enough to show up on this map scale. When I turn around, you can see that as we head down, it just flattens out into an open plain down there. So the contour line in that land feature is lost in the next contour down the hill, so it doesn't show up on that one. And then as you head back up the hill, it's lost on the contours up there as well. So it only really appears in this little section. Your task for this video is to walk in an area that's close by to you that has tracks and is controlled, but then look for the features that are implied in the landscape. So you might have to walk a little bit off track to do that, but really you're looking at the features that are implied rather than those really major features. And so looking for those, finding them out in an area which is safe and contained, and that means you don't have to worry about actually knowing where you are very much, but you can focus on looking at those land features that are implied on the map. So that's your task. In our next video, we are going to be looking at off-track walking and planning an off-track walk. So check out that over there. And thanks for watching Outdoors and That, and have a great outdoor adventure.